if you want to texture the background of this, I see, you've attempted that here, and it's a good look. In order to do it successfully, you need to be able to get right up against the edge of your pattern. So if you can't get up against the edge and you're using a rounded face tool, you're going to get these spaces in between every mark. You're not going to be able to touch the edge, and it's going to start sinking in like this. So some of the ways to solve those problems. This is another piece that you pressed. This one's flat. Sheet is dead flat. And that's what you started with when you did this one. And so it has nowhere to go but in when you start making blows on it, right? So this is just going to sink in. And then you have to correct it, which isn't a big deal except for the fact that it makes it awkward to get your chasing tool in there once it starts to sink in. And a nice little, I would call it a trick, or just a nice little solution to that, is to take your material before it's in the pitch bowl. And this one, I can see that you put a curve on it already. You curved it down just a little bit. So, your pattern is kind of the apex, and everything kind of curves back. Well, this is flat. So when I start making tool blows here, it kind of has a little way to go before it's flat, which gives the chasing tool, some room to push some metal and not be working in a concave space right away, So in order to get right up to the edge so that you don't have little spaces, you need a tool that has a flat on one side. So these have a flat, it's a rectangle, and the top is an embosser. It's rounded on the top, but I can use the edge and get right up against the pattern, but the blow is going to be a little kind of round dimple mark. You see what I mean? Over here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So this tool is going to get in right up in here. It's pulled tight right against the work. But a tool that has round edges, like this oval embosser, so this tool has rounded edges. Let's see if I can get it to focus. If I try to put that up against a square flat edge, it's going to make little waves like this, and you can't get flat in there. You're just going to make there'll be little spaces. So I'm going to put this. Are you able to see that in the camera?
Let's see. Okay.
I'm just going to give. And this is even a little round for this one. But it's better than going in there with a completely round tool. And you can switch to a rounder tool. I'm going to take the rectangle planisher and kind of cheat and make little sort of fake hammer marks just to get the very inner edge started. And sometimes you may just not have the right tool for the exact thing you're trying to do, and you might have to modify one. We'll talk about that another time. And these are really tiny embossers, so they're going to make really small marks. I don't know that this is the mark you wanted, but the concept is that if you want to get up against a square edge and have your hammer marks look as though they're, behind the pattern, and the pattern's laying on top of the hammer mark, which is kind of presumably what you're going for. Is that correct? You have to make it look like that hammer mark is behind there, which means it's got to get up against the edge. And sometimes that means faking a hammer mark with a flat tool, like chasing it to look like a hammer mark. So that's what I'm doing with this flat, just a plain rectangle planisher. You use anything that fits, anything you want. And I kind of put it in there and turned it a little, make it look like a hammer mark. It's rectangle on the outside, but it's getting up in there against the square edge. Can you see?
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of like a fake hammer mark, faked. Now I'm going to come out a little farther, make an actual hammer mark. I wouldn't say this is exactly the right shape, but I don't want to go hunting for Does the explanation work though?
Yeah.
You've got to be able to fit up against the piece. If you have to go through 2 or 3 tools to figure out what's going to fit, then do that. You make a couple marks and see if they're the marks you want. If you make a couple marks and go, oop, nope, don't like the way that looks, then you find the tool that works. I would probably dig through, a couple dozen tools to find just the right tool to make this mark. I don't really like the way these ones are coming out. I would find something probably that has a shallower dome. I'm using the oval embosser.
And you're twisting it.
And I'm twisting it because I don't want it to make an oval mark. I kind of want it to make a rounder mark. But it's because sometimes you just have to use what you have. If this is what you have, then you have to live with what you have and get it to make marks that you like. But you can see that looks different than that.
Oh yeah.
See that here it's
I can see the ridge.
It doesn't go into the edge. Here it goes right into the edge. Do you see that?
Yep, I see that.
And that.
Uh-huh.
Right. And while those marks may not be like the most amazing shape, the point I'm trying to make is that I had to find something that will go right up in there. You can't have your marks, start a millimeter away from the edge, or it's just gonna look crummy. It looks like your design is up on a hill, and the marks around it are just surrounding it, as opposed to emerging from behind it. Something like this tool right here that was a little more rounded.
Let me see that one. Okay.
So it's completely flat. I mean, it's a soft corner and everything because it's a planisher. It's not sharp, but something like a little more rounded than that, but not quite as round as this, would be ideal.
Okay.
Because it's not going to make a tiny little deep, tiny little mark. It'll be shallower, so it'll make a bigger kind of P mark. Does that make sense? Yes, I could keep going, but I don't want to do your whole thing. And actually, right there. You can use a planisher to create a fake hammer mark, like it looks like half of a hammer mark that was like coming out from the inside. But you can't do that with a tool that actually makes a peen mark. You have to do it with something else. See that?
So you're tilting your
I'm
tool
going to make one
too.
over here. So I'm going to start one over here. I'm angling it in because I don't want to get the outside edges of this rectangle because I'm going to try to fake a hammer mark. What I want it to look like is a part of a hammer mark that's emerging from behind the thing. Do you see it right there?
Yep.
You can see it looks like part of that hammer mark is stuck underneath. Do you see that?
Yep.
But what I used was a rectangle planisher. If I just stamp it, it does that. But if you put it on its edge and go like that, it makes a different mark. This is really low relief stuff. I mean, you have to have this, this has to be your aesthetic taste, but here's an oval planisher. I mean, you can tilt these tools and angle them and make all kinds of different marks. Here's that same tool. But this has a round edge on it here, so you can't use it
right there.
Because it, unless the edge is round there. If this was a little hollow. So here's a spot. Here's a spot like that. That's kind of round.
It'll fit in there.
It'll kind of fit in there. So maybe that's the one we use right there. Just to see that, it's just like it looks like a hammer mark that's poking out. And then you have to take one that's going to make a similar mark and then do the next one that is actually outside. Again, these are a little too round to make a mark that matches that. But does that explain it?
And around the wings, would you use the triangular?
Yeah, that's a toughie. It's more of the same. You have got to find things that fit. Sometimes you have to fudge it. Really, a better thing to do is, if you're working with something so minuscule, it's almost better to use matting tools. So yeah, and leave the back of the triangle up,
Okay, so once again,
so that you're
it's
not making,
angled.
you don't want to make a triangle. You want to make something that can kind of fake double as a hammer mark. These embossers that I'm trying to show you this with are just way too round because they're making this little tiny hard round pin mark. And we're trying to make something a little softer, but you can certainly sand down the tops of things and make them shallower, or again, just find another tool that you might have that makes a different mark. You just use your negative space to check and see what shapes you're working with, what you have, what you don't have. You can chase a spot to make it look like a bigger hammer mark. You can make it look like whatever you want. So look. See that? And of course these aren't round and it's a kind of a crude demonstration, but do you see? So now look at that space.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I mean, not that this is necessarily bad, but what didn't happen here is you didn't poke in the space behind the wingtips.
Nope.
I might even use, kind of a bigger. It just has to be a lower dome because these pin marks are so pronounced. They don't kind of jive.
What is you keep using the term P marks?
Pin mark.
Peen?
Pin, like a hammer pin.
Ah.
Pin marks, hammer marks,
Okay.
tool marks, pin marks.
Okay.
A pin is I don't know the definition of pin, to be honest, but these are pin marks.
Okay.
Hammer marks, tool marks, pin marks. So this is creating a very deep, pronounced dimple, and you might really like something shallower. Or, hammer marks, if you're trying to make little chasing marks that look like you hammered, you might want something just like a lot more shallow than what I had there. Here's one that's a lot shallower. You see the difference?
Okay. So it's a rounded.
It's just less.
edges.
It's just less. Like this is such a tall dome, right? These are flatter.
Okay.
So the mark that they're gonna make is gonna be it's not gonna be as deep pronounced.
And those aren't as shiny.
Well, these are new, so they're totally shiny.
Okay.
But it's nice. It's nice when they get a little softened. They start out shiny, so that all the marks and nicks are out of them. But you can just rub them with Scotch-Brite, or leave them shiny if you like them shiny. A lot of people like them dulled down. But see, look. But see how they're shallower?
Uh-huh.
And the one that I was using is, there you go, here, this one. It's a rectangle.
It's deeper.
It's way deeper.
Okay.
Because it's just a taller, rounder tool. So if I were to do hammer marks with it, let's start over here. This even has this has a slightly flattened, it's like an oval that has slightly flat sides in one spot, flattens out just a little bit there. So these are the nuances in chasing tools. So let's say you have my 10-piece matting, small pattern set, and you want to do that. You can take a sanding stick and you can, if you have the eye for it and you know what you want to finesse it to be, you can take a sanding stick and make a little mark. I mean, they're hardened. It won't just come off super easy, but you can, it's normal to want to dress tools. Here, this has a little flat spot on it. So watch how I can get up into the edge of this. Can you see how it goes right into the edge?
Uh-huh.
See how it's going right up against it? Right there?
Yep.
So does this make sense? Now this is a better tool to illustrate my point with. You need a flat edge to get up against, and it might take two tools. You have to work with what you have, though.
Okay.
All right.
All right.